Frank was the second child of Michael and Maggie, born on the 10th of February 1895, and he grew up around Derby Street, Kew. It's also likely that he attended Sacred Heart, possibly being amongst some of the first students who attended the Cotham Road site when the hall opened in 1901 and the school moved from its original Walpole Street premises to the current location in Cotham Road. Frank's secondary schooling was at Parade College in East Melbourne. He used to tell how he often bowled a metal hoop along as he tried to beat the cable tram which ran from the corner of Barker's Road and High Street. He also had to milk the cows in a paddock in Derby Street before he went to school. In 1911, aged 16, Frank joined the Federal Treasury Department, working as a clerk under the Commissioner of Taxation. The Tax Office history tells us that this was effectively at the very start of the Tax Office, set up to collect the new land tax. Previously, in the first 10 years of the federal government, revenue had come from customs duties on imports and excises on alcohol and similar. The first Deputy Commissioners for Taxation were appointed on the 12th of December 1910, and vacancies for the first 33 tax officers, clerks and valuers were advertised in early January. Frank's starting date was on the 9th of February 1911, so it is likely that he was one of the very first cohorts of new clerks for this new department. Perhaps we can see him in some of these photos from the Melbourne Taxation Office, taken in 1919. Gavin tells a story that Frank played football for the public service team, and one year they actually got to play on the MCG as a curtain raiser before a final. In 1923, Frank made the pivotal decision to leave the white-collar world of the tax office and join the family business, still operating on the corner of High Street and Derby Street. The following year, he became a homeowner, purchasing 112 Adeney Avenue, and we can see some more detail of the premises from this Board of Works map for Adeney Avenue, created in 1920. Now, we don't know where this young man with a family and small business, growing up surrounded by produce and fuel, met Thelma, who had lived a relatively wealthy lifestyle at Tower Hill in Ashburton, but perhaps it was at a dance. But their wedding in 1924 was described in a number of breathless newspaper articles, and Thelma must have looked impressive in her delightful wedding dress. Frank was 29 and Thelma was 24. The young couple honeymooned in Lorne. Let's hear Frank and Thelma's children talk about their father and what he achieved in the business.
I think that Dad had an enormous drive in him, and he must have got that from his mum, because his own father was more casual. Yeah. Going up the pub every night.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think Dad inherited his business drive from his mother, because he was full on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was
See, he built. At one stage, the workforce at the store was 40. Employed 40 men. See, they had the contract for the building their tram lines. I think it was over in Footscray. So the drays would have gone over there. So a gang of men would have been up there every day. And he got lots of other contracts. He got the contract to supply soil to the Kew Golf Links. That was full on too, that one.
He was a businessman, and he got all these schools selling the coke.
Yes, that's right.
The hot water service was the coke.
Like that.
Saviour and Genesano
and the model dairy and the bakeries.
yes.
Yeah. So he was a goer, and also I think that if you may remember, he had a breakdown just before the war broke out.
Went to Mildura.
And I think that's probably the result of this working through the Depression and trying to hang on to the men that he employed. So he branched out in as many ways as he could. So
And now Peter provides some more details about his father.
Said he would, if any of us were away from home, he'd write a letter to us every week. And once they got married, all happy, he'd done his job, got them set up for life. Yeah, but took a great interest, but no longer the great responsibility of making sure that they're okay.
And what about other? What was your dad's interests outside of the business? And was he into football? Was he into cricket? Was he into?
Well, I think apart from his business, it was
Did
the
he have a
family.
hobby?
No, he didn't have any hobbies, I don't think. See, he worked every day. Even on Saturdays, the store was open, busy. And if we were playing footy down at the old Stradbroke Park, he'd try and come down and just watch us maybe for a half or something like that. So we'd have something to talk about when we got home. He watched us. But I don't think he had any real hobbies apart from work and the family. He was tough on us, really. Yeah, because I think if you look at all the family, the thing that was missing from us was confidence. Yeah, really having to struggle to get some sense of worth. So he must have been put down a fair bit.
While the bitterness and fighting with his sisters about their mother's will had caused a lot of grief in his later years, this had also been the time where he had a chance to spend more time with Thelma, and he had begun to see his children's families begin to grow and seen some of his grandchildren beginning to grow up. Frank died from a stroke on the 12th of September 1967, aged 72. Let's have a look at Thelma's life. Thelma was born in 1900, the daughter of William Stoney and Elizabeth Moylan. William was a successful tailor, running his business in the old East Melbourne market. The Stoneys had a comfortable lifestyle with several properties. There were 5 sons and 3 daughters in the family. Thelma grew up in the then countryside of Ashburton, catching the Deepdene Dasher to attend school at Genazzano with her older sister Alice and her younger sister Estelle. 2 of Thelma's brothers enlisted in the First World War, and their families would have gone through the same worries and pain that the Carrucans and so many other families of the time, not knowing how or when their boys would return. Dudley was wounded in the head and the shoulder in France, while Eric escaped without any physical wounds, but both her brothers brought home mental trauma, like so many other veterans of the First World War. Thelma was 24 when she married Frank, and they had a honeymoon in Lorne, which meant sailing from Port Phillip Bay. We're told in the reports that Thelma travelled in a grey tweed costume with fox furs and a smart black panne velvet hat. Here we can see a photo of the young family. Thelma holding on to a young, possibly puzzled Gavin, Brian in the background, and Moya at the side, with Thelma's sister-in-law Zilda and her son Jeff Stoney. Thelma's life was not going to be easy. She'd got engaged to a young man on his way up in the tax office, but by the time they were married, he was working in the family business, driving trucks, delivering produce, and helping his parents run a business. The death of Brian when he was just 7 would have been a terrible shock, and it's clear Thelma had trouble coping with his loss and the pressures of a growing family compounded by the depression. Let's hear from Thelma and Frank's children on their memories of their mum, talking about her child in the countryside of Ashburton and then her married life.
See, they went to the country.
Because Mum was, her
But
health
she had
was
bad
poor.
health.
Tower Hill.
She had rheumatic fever and she was in bed for 6 months.
Started with, and then
Oh, it's changed to rheumatic.
it went to her heart, you see.
And then she was poorly and had to stay in bed.
12 months she was fragile, and then she went to school and she wasn't allowed to run.
Oh, there we are.
Yes, because
Oh, I'm glad I didn't take after her.
you can't be running, Thelma. Don't run. What you see.
They used to travel to school on the Deepdene Dasher when they went to Genazzano.
Was that a train?
Yes.
It's a part of the old outer circle rail.
Oh, nice.
Our mother was a lovely
A
lady.
lady.
Now,
She's
our
really
father
a lady.
used to say, listen to your mother, she's a lady. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Peter? When Dad would say, listen to your mother, she's a lady. she knows the right thing to do.
He did say that he was very grateful that she married him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he wasn't always. She drove. God bless her.
She swept him off.
She
the
wasn't a
feet.
very
Practical.
lady, and but she had a heart. Oh,
No, they didn't have enough. They didn't have, much.
and it was depression.
It was.
It was terrible.
And she would have had just a couple of dresses from the lawyer to wear, and she'd have to wash them, and she'd put it in the stove to dry it, in the gas stove. Yes, she did. And she opened up the gas stove because she was cold. Yes, but we had a
And did it
one.
burn?
No, I don't know. I don't remember.
You know, Kieran, life would have been very difficult for women at that time because there was a lot of manual work. So they became very physically strong, and I think it was a little bit different to the kind of upbringing that my mother had, and so she was often sick, but she was a great. She didn't complain, but she was often sick or unwell.
She had nervous problems.
Yeah.
And also
She
at
wasn't
the time,
strong mentally.
the wood was delivered
Oh, that bird.
and it was not chopped up, so she was chopped the wood up to get smaller
kindling.
pieces of kindling, and apparently the wood came up and whacked her in the eye, and she went to the doctor's. Well, he was absolutely horrified that she had to chop their own wood, and from then on we got it chopped up then, and
But he used to get the worst wood. It was always the greenest. It was.
I think because we got it for nothing, we had to take the worst.
Oh.
We've got potatoes and onions.
Now the family would tell us more about Thelma's sisters, Estelle and Alice.
What is Alice? Alice was her older sister.
And Estelle was the younger sister, but she died young.
She was 30.
Yes.
Yes, and she
She-
died a month before I was born
And she
because she went on a banana
she
diet.
died. She was a diet.
She wanted to be thin,
So that was
so she
So
went
this-
on this diet. Apparently, as it
Alice.
went, Alice told us the story, that she ate bananas. And she ended up at the Austin Hospital with TB, I think.
I don't know what happened.
Anyway, she was only in her third. She was
she was
30,
only young.
young
And
lady.
Alice didn't marry for a long time.
Well, Alice married when she
She's
left the
50.
gas company. At 50, you had to retire, you see.
But didn't her boyfriend die in the war? Was that the story?
No, he
No.
didn't know.
Then she decided, well, if she didn't have any money, so she better get married.
But
why
wasn't she
had the boyfriend.
Well, she
I think she might
she
have.
had boyfriends,
Yes.
but she didn't.
She was a card player and used to go to races.
She had a good time.
I think she had a good time.
And travelled to
then
Sydney.
she
But see, a
realised.
lot of women didn't marry because a lot of the men.
Shortage of men.
A lot of the men were killed.
Was she one that had she had the love of her life, was killed in the war, or she?
Oh, I
I
don't know
never
if
heard
it's
that,
love or
no.
life. But she married this Bill Taylor after her.
No, but she was with this fellow in Sydney. So she must have had a couple of boyfriends. But she went up to Sydney on the train or on the boat or something.
Didn't he die?
And then, yes, and he died. So she had to,
So
come,
she had
home.
to come home.
Whether she did, I don't know what happened.
Whether she used to.
Was he married?
Well,
Oh,
who
we don't know.
knows?
Oh, come on, you know.
No,
Come
we were
on.
only kids. We only heard this, on the...
I've only heard this.
Different
not
world,
years.
John. Kieran, different world.
No one told you
Alice
business.
was a great support to our mother because she used to come out every Saturday afternoon because
a bottle
I
of
didn't
cream.
realise they had to work Saturday morning
Yes, they
Yeah.
do. She worked in the
See,
gas company.
because she worked at the gas company in the city and she would work on a Saturday morning. And so she'd come out to our place in Aidney Avenue with a bottle of cream every Saturday. You know, and the bottle of cream was
sweet.
written in red on the
Yes.
outside. That's all I remember.
Yeah. And she used to smoke.
And our father thought that was
Dreadful. She didn't care.
smoke.
She didn't care whether she smoked. She
And when Mum and her sister had a fight, Dad would disappear. He would interfere.
Yes,
she
because and Alice was very good to Mum, because if she wanted to go somewhere, she'd borrow clothes from Alice, and they were different size altogether.
Yes, but you could get away with it.
Alice was tall, and Mum was short, a bit like you and I.
Peter has more to say about his mother's life, the challenges of raising a family in that era, and her later life after she left Aideney Avenue, 11 years after Frank died in 1978, moving to an old age home at St Joseph's in Rixon Street, where she was able to be cared for nuns, and then a few years later, as her health declined, she moved to the Greenwood nursing home, where sadly she became very withdrawn. Let's hear Peter talk about Thelma's final years.
See, the women at that time were busy and tired, because Mum was always in bed by 7:30. Used to wonder why she went to bed so early. But they were exhausted. So, and there was no transport, and a person like my mum couldn't walk far. So, and see, she was without a mum too. Her mother died when she was only about 14, I think. And then her brothers went away to war. Some came back mad. But Mum was very submissive in the sense that she always kept herself really nice. She always made sure that she looked good. But as for interests, I don't think so. She just liked company, like having a chat. But she didn't have any other activities that I know, because sometimes they were so busy. See, Mondays was wash day, and especially during winter when they try to dry the clothes in the outside with the props, and sometimes the props would collapse and they were all dirty again. And then the ironing was a big business. I remember when we bought her a washing machine, how she wept. Yeah, but it was a beautiful gift. Because at long last she didn't have to light the copper, because many times we hadn't chopped the wood for her, and she'd have to go and chop the wood. Oh no, she had a tough life, all right. Oh yes, she went to the nursing home, or it's Rixon Street. That's right. She went into silence. I remember she went into silence. I used to be envious of Gavin. Gavin would go and see Mum. He'd stay for a while. I never stayed a while. Just what am I going to talk about? But I think what killed Mum was she became incontinent.
Yeah.
And they couldn't. The place where she was staying with the nuns, they didn't have. They couldn't put up with it, but she had to leave. I think she really wanted to die. But what was interesting, because she went into silence. She couldn't rouse her. And
until did it.
yeah, I can't. Anyway, she one day I went there and she opened her eyes, and she'd been silent for so long. And then she said, "That's a nice jumper you're wearing." And it was just shortly after that she died. Because I think what happened, this is my theory, is that unconsciously there's a lot of things to be sorted out. So I think the sorting out was done, and then she came back to life again and really said her goodbyes, and just died peacefully, thank God. Yeah, good things. Yeah, they were good people. More than anything, both our parents were good people. Yeah. Yeah. We're all humans, so we've got a lot of defects as well as qualities, but they were good people. You can look at the way the kids have turned out. They're good people. Yeah.
Thelma died in 1988, aged 88. She'd been born when Victoria was still a colony, had lived through 2 world wars and a depression, seen the invention of powered flight and then the landing on the moon, and the emergence of radio and television, amongst many other changes across her life. But perhaps most importantly, she was loved by her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren.